Hi, my name is Taylor Dill, and I'm the PhD student for Battle for the Belt, and we're out here at our Worcester location, and today we're talking with Dr. Manbir Rakkar, and she is our state soil fertility specialist.
Hello everyone, I'm Manbir and I am an assistant professor of soil fertility and nutrient management in SENR department, and as Taylor mentioned, I also serve as the soil fertility specialist. I joined Ohio State University last August. Most of my research has happened in the Midwest, but I have also spent about 2 years at Montana State University looking at soil acidity specifically. And now I'm over here and I'm building my program to fine-tune the fertilizer recommendations for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, along with some background work of soil health.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks.
So I wanted to ask you today about nitrogen management in corn. And so my first question is, what's the optimal rate for side dress applications here in Ohio?
So optimal rate would be something, the amount of nitrogen that would give me the maximum net profit. Now, when we talk about nitrogen and corn production, corn needs nitrogen. Nitrogen is a major essential nutrient, but the relation of nitrogen input and the yield is not always linear. When we add nitrogen, the very first units are the ones that give us the biggest yield boost. But when we approach around like 160 pounds of nitrogen, that yield boost kind of diminishes. So the relation between nitrogen input and corn yield is linear initially, but then it plateaus. Another factor for deciding optimal nitrogen rate is the cost of the nitrogen. It's not free, it's very expensive. So we have a tool that takes care of all these algorithms: the yield response to nitrogen, the cost of fertilizer, and on top of that, the expected corn price that we get. That tool is known as MRTN, maximum return to nitrogen, and all you need for that tool is what kind of fertilizer you used. Is your corn following soybean, or is it corn on corn kind of scenario? And then what's the expected corn price? You plug in those three information and then it spits out an optimal nitrogen rate. So the last I checked, for example, we are using UAN, and the fertilizer prices are for that specifically is around $350 per ton, and the expected corn price is around $4.60 for December 2024. That gives you around 164 pounds of nitrogen if it's a corn following a soybean scenario. So that would be the optimal nitrogen rate.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, well, also, what stage are we looking at to side dress corn? Where is there a too early stage or a too late stage?
Most of the time, the recommended stage is around V4, V5. So if you look at the trajectory of how corn uptakes nitrogen, up until V4, it's usually only about a pound of nitrogen is taken. But once it hits V4 and all the way to tasseling, that's the stage where it really, really needs nitrogen, and it's just gulping that nitrogen. Mm-hmm. So that's around the stage V4, V5, we usually recommend going for side dressing and application.
Okay. So in Ohio, and especially this year, we've seen it be very wet, especially in northwest Ohio. So if we're looking to apply our side dress at V4 or V5 and it's too rainy and we miss it, what do we do then?
Yeah, that's a great question. Side dressing nitrogen is a great strategy to improve nitrogen use efficiency, but then we always get into this scenario of the timing to get into the field, too wet, all those situations, and it did happen this year, 2 wet springs. That's not the end of the world. If you miss the window from V4 to V5, as I mentioned, that the N nitrogen uptake is very huge up until tasseling. So I would still recommend whenever you get the window, go there and apply that side dress application. Only issue is if it has gone way too far up until like later stages of corn, it's very tall, like 6 feet or something. Then there comes the logistical issues, like do you have an equipment that can get into the field without destroying your crop? So that's one hiccup in that situation.
So if I'm a farmer and I'm trying to test out different nitrogen rates on my farm, what's the best way that I can find what works best on my own farm?
The best strategy to determine nitrogen for your specific farm is do the nitrogen trials. Have some strips in your field with different nitrogen rates that will give you a good indication of what really works for your situations based on what texture you have, what kind of organic matter you have, corn, what kind of corn you're using. That will give you a really site-specific information of nitrogen requirement for your farm. That will be the best way to go. But then if that's not an option on plate, I would look for the data, maybe like go for the research center trials happening nearby and see how the nitrogen is responding there. If that's not even the case, then again, we just use the tools to predict nitrogen availability in the soil, again going back to the soil test, and then MRTN and crop sensors to go for site-specific nitrogen management.
So farmers have a lot of tools to be able to find what their nitrogen application should be on farm.
Right, yes.
So if we have any more fertility questions, what's some resources that we can look at from Ohio State?
The best resource for soil fertility recommendations and any relevant question with regards to soil fertility would be the Tri-State Fertilizer Recommendation Guide, which was published in 2020. There is also an agronomy guide published by Ohio State that you can refer to. Also, you can subscribe to the articles like Corn Newsletter, and there are some fact sheets that are published by Ohio Line. Those are also great resources which can tell you up-to-date, in-season questions that you might have been occurring. And apart from that, there is a website, soilfertility.osu.edu, that also has latest information about all the fact sheets, publications, extension publications, and even field days upcoming. So you can refer to that website as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to following your career and your lab and watching you grow here at Ohio State. We have one last question we have to ask everybody. Battle for the belt, corn versus soybean. Are you team corn or team soybean?
Let's see, is Osler here? No. Okay, I'm gonna go with the soy.
You're gonna be team soybean? Okay. You heard it here. Team soybean. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Taylor, for inviting me. This is great. Thank you, everyone.